And good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our never-ending series on Tune In Tuesdays. Today we're going to cover business continuance for the mid-market, and I'm going to walk through our presentation here, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions at the end, either through the operator online. You can also post them in your live meeting under the Q&A session, or you can actually hit us with an email even after the event is over, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So let's get started. First of all, just a little bit about Champion Solutions Group and why we're doing this. As you probably know, we're a 30-year-old technology company that's actually located in the hurricane capital of the world down here in South Florida. So business continuance and disaster recovery is a never-ending thing for us, and we have a lot of our customers that live here in the southeast United States, and all the way obviously over to New Orleans, and even the Carolinas get hit with hurricanes. But we also have other disasters that we have to deal with. We have 22 offices spread amongst 11 states here on the east coast of the United States, and like I said, we have implemented an enterprise business continuance plan here for our business here in South Florida. We've actually had to declare and execute that plan 3 times over the last 5 years because of hurricanes. So we have a real intimate knowledge of what it takes for companies to stay in business and keep things operating even when there's a disaster. So what we're going to do today is actually go over the 9 questions that you need to ask your company about their disaster recovery or business continuance plan. And so what we're going to cover today is what data is important to you, because not all data is mission critical, keep your business running. Also, what applications do you need to run your business? How much time can I be down? You'll find out that there's a Gartner study out there that shows that there is an importance on how long you can be down and whether you'll come back up or not. How current does my data have to be? Does it have to be instantaneous? Do I have to have the data that I'm working on be consistent as my production data? This is probably the #1 reason why a lot of you are joining, is what technologies can I use to accomplish my business continuance plans? And they're changing and ever evolving in our industry. And how do I train my staff to use my business continuance plan? How do I get my production environment back once the problem's resolved? And can I afford not to have a business continuance plan? So we're going to walk through all of these 9 questions. Hopefully we'll give you some of the answers, and there's never all the answers, but at least it'll give you some place to start when you're looking at developing your own business continuance plan. So the major disasters that we're going to be talking a lot, obviously hurricanes down here in South Florida is our #1 concern. But fire is something that everyone has to worry about. And how do you survive having a catastrophic fire in your environment? Obviously, oil spills, I put that in there only because it's in the news and it is affecting some of the industries out there. And then floods like we had after the hurricanes, like up in New Orleans and other parts of the country. And then, the things that we also have to deal with down here in South Florida is lightning and power outages. These are 2 things that a lot of companies don't even consider, but we get lightning strikes. In fact, not only are we the hurricane capital of the world, there are more lightning strikes in Florida than there is any place in the world. So we have to be concerned about that. And then obviously power outages, not just because of hurricanes or disasters, but people driving into telephone poles that have the transformers on there. Those type of things we have to deal with, and we could be out for hours or days. And how do we use those things to make sure that we're up and running and our customers still get the customer service that they're looking for? Just to put this slide in here to show you what they're forecasting for the 2010 hurricane season. As you can see, this is going to be a busier than usual hurricane season down here. At least they're predicting that. Last year we kind of got away from what we've been getting in the past. So they're predicting a lot of named storms. And remember, this isn't just going to affect us here in South Florida. this can spread all the way up and down, the East Coast of the United States. So I wanted to put this in here just to show you that, we have to be ready for it year-round, but this August and September are really the two biggest months for us down here in South Florida. So let's talk about what data is important to your corporation, because we all know that we have a lot of different data in our environments. We have file servers that contain all of our Excel spreadsheets, all of our Word documents, all the things that we need on a daily basis. We also have things like database information that we have to worry about, email information that we have to worry about, even parts of our company that are doing test applications, developing applications, all that data is important, but is it important to keep our business running? So the first thing that you have to do is you have to meet with each business unit. You have to meet with accounting. You have to meet with sales. You have to meet with manufacturing, with all the different departments throughout your corporation, and find out what's important to them. What you might think is important might not be what they need to do their day-to-day job. You also have to find out what data they need to perform their day-to-day job to keep your company running. You have to agree on which data is the most important. And what I mean by that is the time frame of that data. Do you need to have everything, all the historical data that's in your production environment, or is there a subset of information that's required to keep your business running? And those are the things that you have to find out. And then you've got to agree upon an SLA that will meet both the business and IT goals of your corporation. So it's really important that, everybody thinks they got to be up in 30 minutes. And everyone thinks that, their data is the most important. But you got to actually start to make business decisions here, because not everything can come up in 30 minutes. So you have to figure out which data is the most important, which data needs to come online first. You'll also find out that a lot of the applications out there that we're going to be talking about have to have certain data up before they can actually come online. So you also have to build those things into your business continuance plan to make sure that that type of data is up, whether it be a SQL database or an Oracle database or some information that ties into that application. Because just because the application's up, if the data isn't up that it needs, it'll be worthless to you. So let's talk about what applications have to be up. And like I said, meeting with each business unit will really give you a great idea on the applications that need to be running. You also have to find out from your vendors if there's additional licensing that you need to have to run those applications in case of a disaster. So for instance, if you're doing data replication in first of all, SQL database or Oracle database or some type of CRM application or whatever it might be, if both of those applications are up and available, do you have to have two different licenses for that application to be running for business continuance? Is it also a type of cluster, whether it's an active-active or active-passive cluster that you have to have running to be able to make sure that the application is up and running in that environment? You also have to give access options to make sure for each one of those applications. So whether it be a web interface, so if you're, for instance, let's say we're talking about Exchange, and we're talking about using, first of all, like OWA as a way to get to your Exchange email, or whether it be an application for your CRM package where there is a web interface available for it. Do you need to use terminal server connections to be able to access that data, or Citrix, or a whole bunch of other types of applications that will give your end users the ability to get to those type of applications? So it becomes not just important about what applications come up, but how your end users are going to access that type of application. And then how much time can I be down? And then, the clock's ticking from the time you declare a disaster until your people are up and running. And so one of the things that you're going to see in almost every business continuance plan is an RTO, or a recovery time objective. And like I said, that objective is going to be different for each one of your business processes. So this is where your plan really comes into effect, when you find out which applications need to be up and running, in what time frame, and what data do they have to have available to them for those applications to work properly. So this includes time to fix any problems that are going to happen during your recovery period, because as we all know, nothing ever works perfect, so you have to make sure you plan on worst case scenarios. You also have to make sure that these are running in parallel with also all the other things that you're bringing up, whether they be in the same location or in different locations throughout your business continuance plan. And what I mean by that is, some of the things you might be running up in, for instance, cloud architecture. So let's say that you're running your email or your SharePoint or other applications up in a cloud environment. How do those things need to be able to tie into your other applications that are in there? So for instance, if you're running CRM and you're running that as on-premise and not in the cloud, and now you're moving that CRM into, for instance, another location, how does that communication work with your applications that are running in the cloud? So you got to make sure that all of these things tie together and are part of your overall plan for business continuance. The other thing that we got to worry about is our recovery point objective. And what I mean by that is, for instance, email. Do I need to have the emails that were sent out today in my disaster recovery plan? So in my business continuance plan. Do I need to be current in my environment? I mean, up to the minute. Or can I be 5 minutes behind? Or can I be an hour behind? Or can I be 2 hours behind? Because obviously that's going to dictate how you have to get your data from your production environment into any of these either cloud environments or disaster recovery locations. So, whether you're using data replication, whether you're using backups to restore into those environments, all these things will take into account where you need to be from a recovery point objective. And as you can see, our CRM package, we want in this graphic that you see here, we want that to be just 2 hours behind, but our accounting package can be 5 hours behind, and our email could be as much as 24 hours behind. So, and you got to be able to set those type of criteria when you're talking about which point in time do I need to recovery from a time frame on my data. So it's real important that you set those as part of your overall plan. This is probably the one area that most people overlook the most when they're designing their business continuance plan. They've got the data over there, they got the applications over there, but now how will my employees access this data? Do I have a secondary site that's set up for them to sit down behind a desk, behind either a thin client or another PC that allows them to access their data? Are they going to be working from home? Are they going to be working from a shared site of one of your vendors or one of your partners? All these things have to be considered when you talk about losing your building or losing the facility where they normally sit. And like I said, you got to also determine how they're going to access that, whether it be web-based applications. Web-based applications are the easiest way for your employees to be able to get to their data. Whether it be terminal services, whether you're going to give them a remote desktop and allow them to log in the servers. One of the things that a lot of people are taking advantage of is application virtualization, whether it be with Citrix or ThinApp or a lot of other available products out there, where they can access the application and not have to have the full desktop in their environment. Even though desktop virtualization is a big part also. And then what type of mechanism am I going to use? Am I going to use a VPN so that I have a secure environment for my data? Am I going to use just the internet to be able to connect from a DSL line in their house, or cable modems, or really even Verizon or AT&T or wireless cards that allow me to do that? If I'm already using MPLS in my environment for remote offices, is my business continuance solution just another drop on my MPLS network? And then cloud computing. And, you know, cloud is becoming a more and more versatile way of getting to business continuance data. And we're doing a lot with customers to be able to use cloud as a viable option for some, if not all, of their applications. And then what type of clients am I going to allow them to use? Do they have to be a secure client where I'm going to just allow them to connect into, like I said, like a virtual desktop, and allow just that virtual desktop to access my data? Am I going to allow them to use PCs that they have in their house to be able to access data? And these are things that you got to find out, number one, from a compliancy standpoint, how you can do this. But even from a data access standpoint, is this the way that I want my employees to be able to access any of this data? Let's talk about some of the new technologies, or what technologies are available to you to be able to accomplish this business continuance plan. Traditional backup has been around for a long time. It's what, let's be honest, most of the mid-market that we're talking about. When we're talking mid-market, we're usually talking about corporations that have anywhere from 200 users up to about 1,000 users. We're not talking about, you know, the Fortune 500 companies and things like that. We're talking really about the mid-market companies in the United States. And traditional backup is still the number one way that they do business continuance. And this is just taking the data that you have, yesterday's backup, going to a facility that you can rent equipment, or that you have access to equipment, restoring your data back to yesterday's backup, and giving you the ability to run your business. Nowadays, with a lot of the companies that are out there, whether it be IBM, HP, NetApp, or others, you have the ability to replicate your really important data from one physical location to another. This gives you the shortest RPO, or the least amount of time between your production data and your either disaster recovery or business continuance plan. It gives you the ability to set criteria on how far behind you want to be from your production into your secondary site. So data replication is a very viable option. The thing is, you do have to have some type of centralized storage. So we're talking about a pretty sizable investment on the corporation's part. You also have to have another one of those type of devices in your secondary site. So we're not talking about a inexpensive way of doing this. Now, one of the things when it comes to data replication that a lot of customers are taking advantage of is host-based data replication with companies like DoubleTake, for instance, which allow you to actually install a piece of software on your production server, install another piece of software on your secondary server, and allow them to communicate the changes throughout the day, so that it gives you the ability not to have to make that big investment in centralized storage, SANS or iSCSI or NAS-based storage, and give you the ability to replicate your data between your production environment and your secondary environment at a very low cost and ease of use way of doing it. Now, the thing is, it's not good for every operating system, and it is operating system specific. So obviously Windows it works really well with, but the other operating systems, we'd actually have to find another way to do it. And then you have server virtualization, which, you know, most of the companies that we deal with have at least started taking advantage of server virtualization. Right now with VMware, which is the market leader, but also now Microsoft's made a very big push with their Hyper-V product. And if you're taking advantage of server virtualization, you're also taking advantage of not being tied to specific hardware, which is a really big part of recovering from some type of disaster, whether it be a fire that burns down your data center, whether it be, like we talk about here, hurricanes, where even if you have full backups of your servers, it's really hard to recover that data into a server that's not exactly like the one that you started out with. With server virtualization, you actually become hardware agnostic. So it just gives you the ability to take your data that you have, restore it to almost any type of server that's out there, and give you the ability to get back up and running quickly. So server virtualization not only solves a problem during your production environment by lowering the cost of deploying applications, but also gives you the ability to come up with a business continuance plan that's very viable in using hardware that doesn't have to be exactly like that you're using in your production environment. Probably the biggest thing in the last couple of years from a technology standpoint for business continuity plan is cloud computing. Cloud computing allows you to take advantage of resources that you don't own, that you can rent like you do your power or your water or anything that you buy on a utility basis. What cloud allows you to do is access processor, memory, storage, networking, and only pay for it as you need it. So it gives you the ability during those disasters to actually crank up whatever cloud environment you have, get more resources to be able to run your production environment, and then give them back when you're done. What it has actually done for the mid-market is actually made disaster recovery and business continuity affordable. Even with server virtualization, that has actually lowered the cost, but there's still a very large investment up front, not only from the hardware, but from the software to drive it, the storage, and everything else that's involved in server virtualization. With cloud computing, all those costs are basically out the window, because with cloud computing, you're just paying for the resources that you're using. So in other words, during times when there is no disaster, you're paying a small amount just to replicate your data up into the cloud. But when a disaster actually happens, you can crank up those resources, obviously pay more during those periods of time, and then when you're done, turn them off, give them back to the cloud, and actually stop paying for them. So it happens to be one of the really key initiatives that a lot of people are starting to take a real strong look at for their business continuity plan. And then desktop virtualization. This, even if people aren't using it as part of their production strategy, we're finding that this is an area of technology that a lot of companies are starting to take advantage of when it comes to their business continuance, their training, and their lab environments, is using desktop virtualization. It allows you to roll out the applications you need without having to worry about what devices they're using to access those desktops. So they could be using a thin client. They could be using an older PC in their house. They could be using a kiosk in some locations, where all they need is a simple client to be able to access the desktop that you've designed for them, and all of your applications will run because you've actually deployed them into that desktop environment. So desktop virtualization is taking off in production, but it's actually being taken advantage of a lot more in business continuity plans and disaster recovery plans. So really, those are the 5 technologies that we see companies taking advantage of when it comes to business continuity. Now let's talk about training your staff, because this is one of the things that most people don't take the time to do, or don't take the time to plan when we're talking about a disaster hitting. Their employees don't know where to go, and that's really one of the key things that you have to go over with your employees. How they access their business continuance environment. whether they have to go to another facility, whether they have different logins, whether they can access it from their homes. All of those things have to be put in a step-by-step manual, just like you do when it comes to your own plan for business continuance. And they must understand that they're not going to get the same performance as they're in their production environment. This is a key component that we find that most companies miss out on explaining to their end users. Their end users won't complain if they know that their performance is not going to be the same as it is in the production environment. And in almost every case where we've helped companies design their business continuity plan, no one can actually afford the performance of production. And that's really what it is. It just comes down to dollars and cents. And as long as we can, have an SLA in place, whether it be 75% of the performance numbers we get in production, 80%, 60%, whatever the number is, as long as your employees know that, believe it or not, they're very flexible when it comes to knowing that, hey, at least I can get to my data. I know it's not as fast as when it's in my production environment, but they'll understand that as long as that's been explained to them up front. They also have to understand that there's going to be an increased level of security once you go outside your building and outside your production environment, where they might have to have multiple logins to applications. They might have to go through a VPN connection instead of just a straight connection. As long as all these things, again, are explained to them, normally employees don't have a problem. They have to also know that there are going to be some applications that are just not going to be available. And they have to understand why. Because, if this is something that, they use on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, it probably won't be there in a disaster recovery situation, at least not right away. So they have to understand which applications come up, how they're going to work, and which applications won't come up. One of the biggest problems that we see with companies out there is they think that if they in a disaster, they have to have everything up and running that they have in production. And it's great. They'd love to have it, but they can't afford it. So they have to figure out, like I said, as part of the plan here, what applications need to be up and running. And they have to make sure that their employees know that those applications are available and which ones aren't. And then lastly, they have to know how to get technical support. Let's be honest, this isn't going to be just like they run every single one of their environments. So there might have to be a couple extra people at the help desk during a disaster. There might have to be vendors or third parties that get involved in helping you support your end users get connected with a VPN connection or get connected through MPLS or some of the other things that aren't just intuitive to the end user. So it's really important that they know how to get a hold of technical support and that those technical support people know a step-by-step plan on how to get these people up and running. It's one of the steps that you have to make sure you take to be able to make sure that this plan is working correctly. This is probably the biggest question we get from IT is how do I get my production environment back when the disaster is over? First of all, you have to find out when it's safe to get back. Just because you can ping the servers, just because, the power comes back on, doesn't mean you start failing things back over. You got to make sure, whether it's communicating with your electric company or the utility company in your area, whether you lease your building and you have to get a hold of the landlord, whether you get a hold of the fire department or whoever it might be to find out if you can occupy your building again. All these things have to be thought out before you start rolling back. You have to, and you notice I said rolling back, not bringing everything back up, because you're going to find out that you're going to bring things back one application at a time. And you have to actually have a failback plan, just like you had a disaster recovery or business continuance plan on what things you brought over, what SLAs you had in place for applications. you also have to know that you're going to be running in a mixed mode for a while. You're going to have some applications coming back up in production, some that will still be running in your business continuance plan. And you're actually going to be coexisting in both environments for a short period of time, and you have to figure out which ones need to come back, how to get your data synchronized between both locations, whether it be through, like we talked about, data replication, whether it be through backups, your traditional backups that you're going to have to do at your business continuance location. You're going to have to get all those changes that happened during this disaster and get it back into your production environment. And this isn't a small task. It's one of the things that, most people do not take a look at and plan in their environments, but this is a monumental task to get all of that data back into your production environment. Make sure it's all there before you start turning it over to your end users. And the bottom line is you've got to keep your employees informed about where you are in your failback, what systems are running in production, what are still being accessed through your business continuance plan. And then let's talk about, can you afford not to have one of these? And like I told you, we've done a lot of research through Gartner and other places, and as you can see through here, the University of Texas, pretty established university, only 6% of companies suffering from a catastrophic data loss, where they couldn't recover from their backups, they weren't doing any type of data replication, while 43% of them never reopened. The more important number is 51% of them closed within 2 years. So if you ever go through losing your important data that you run your business on, whether it be accounts receivable, accounts payable, your customers' information, if you can't get that back, the percentages are that you're not going to be in business a very long time. As you can see, Gartner estimates that only 35% of SMBs have a comprehensive disaster recovery plan in place. That means that 65% of the companies out there that are in this mid-market space do not have some type of disaster recovery plan in place. And the International Data Corporation estimates that companies lose an average of $84,000 for every hour they're down. Other sources have it up as high as $90,000 per hour. Now, I honestly think that's a little high for SMB, but let's be honest, you are losing money every hour that you're down. You really have to do those calculations for your business. And according to the recent National Small Business Poll, man-made disasters affect 10% of small businesses. That's all. Whereas natural disasters, things like hurricanes, impact more than 30% of all the businesses, small businesses in the United States. So we're talking about, large power outages, large flooding, those type of things. Not people that smoke a cigarette and burn down the buildings. I'm talking about natural disasters are the biggest problem here. As you can see down at the bottom, IDC, about 70% of all successful attacks on computer networks were carried out by employees and insiders, so people that are working in your business. So it's really important to have a business continuance plan for your data. If you don't, those type of attacks could cost you your business. So what I'm going to run through here is just some of our upcoming events that we're going to have, and these are we're actually going to have our summer webcast series. So on August 24th, we have a big one, and this is the one that we're probably the most popular one we've had all summer, where we're talking about Microsoft Office 2010 and how it not only runs on your computer but up in the cloud. And this is we're a pretty big cloud partner. We do a lot with the Microsoft Online Services offering, also with the infrastructure as a service. And running Microsoft in the cloud, Microsoft Office in the cloud, is one of the biggest questions we get from a lot of our customers. Then we're going to talk about on September 14th, a smarter way of running Exchange 2010. And this is a methodology that we came up with the help of our vendors to be able to run Exchange 2010 for the mid-market users, those people that are running 200 to 1,000 users in their environment. And then on September 21st, we're going to take the disaster out of disaster recovery, and we're actually going to have a real in-depth VMware Site Recovery Manager webinar where we're going to have VMware involved. We're going to talk about how it can help you with your disaster recovery and business continuance, and strictly talking about vSphere 4.1 and Site Recovery Manager. We also have a couple of luncheons coming up where we're going to actually be in 11 different cities throughout the East Coast of the United States, places like Tampa. We are going to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're going to be in Akron, Ohio. We're going to be in Cincinnati. We're going to be in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. And we're going to be talking about Exchange 2010 and your options, how to run it on-premise, how to run it in the cloud. We're also going to be talking about Windows 7, whether it be a physical deployment, whether it be virtual desktop deployment. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the cloud and how that plays in there. And you can visit our website at www.championsg.com and get more details about these events.